Welcome back. Complicated. That's one way to describe the challenge of running a family business. According to a Forbes magazine article, about 35% of Fortune 500 companies are family-controlled. They account for half of the nation's GDP and generate 60% of American jobs. Think about it. Walmart, Ford, Comcast, all huge companies keeping our economy chugging. However, those successes are few and far between. Many family businesses fall prey to infighting, lack of leadership, or general apathy, which is why this next story is so unique. It's about a family business currently into its fourth generation of leadership, and particularly about the man who, by consensus, and some might say by destiny, helped to keep the spirit alive. It's all in this edition of Executive Profiles.
So let's go back to your grandfather and his arrival in Atlanta and how the business got started that you so capably have run now for many a decade.
My granddad was from Pensacola, Florida, and was in a family business down there. And when repeal of Prohibition came about, there was sort of an entirely new legal industry that had opened up, and so he got a job with the Continental Distilling Company. And actually his first cousin, Max Kahn, had the opportunity to become a distributor here in Atlanta. 6 months after Max established his distributorship here in Fulton County, he got drafted into the Air Force and asked my grandfather if he'd come up and run the business. And so in 1940, my grandmother and grandfather and father moved to Atlanta.
So 1940, Atlantans start drinking. This is
Right.
a big drinking market?
It's a pretty good market. My granddad was entrepreneurial. My dad never loved the business and always feared the business. My dad was more creative, and even though he went to Wharton and graduated at 19, so he was a good businessman, but his love was the theater and the arts. He always told me, be a professional of some sort. We're in the Bible Belt. We could be put out of business with the stroke of a pen.
And you went to Tulane and went after accounting.
I went to Tulane. I went into accounting by default. Finally found something I could do well in. Ended up actually getting into business school classes my senior year in undergraduate school and did okay. Graduated with an MBA in accounting.
You stayed in New Orleans.
Stayed in New Orleans until I got ready to get married. Got engaged. The opportunity came to move back only because my dad got sick. And at that point, my grandfather said to me, we think you're the only one in the third generation that may be able to run the business. If you don't want to come back and run the business, your family will probably sell it, and we all may sell it. So what do you want to do? And my bride-to-be then said, I'd much rather raise a family in Atlanta than New Orleans. So we moved back at the end of '77, beginning of '78, and I went to work at United.
And then you start to take control of the company and reinvent the business. Talk about transformation.
I think the first transformation piece was the wine industry. My granddad thought it was a fad. He really didn't understand why somebody would want to consume something with 12% alcohol when they could consume something with 40% alcohol. And I said to him, I think it's worth investing in. It's not a mature business any place really outside of California and New York and maybe DC. And after twisting his arm a few different times, we ended up getting some pretty good lines.
So the business starts to grow to the point today that it is one of the 10 largest in the United States? Close to?
You know, probably so. We're a different model, Ed. In our industry, people are generally in the spirits and wine business, or they're in the beer and wine business, but they're generally not in the beer and the spirits business. And I think we were really the first ones in the United States that were major beer distributors probably one of the top 15 beer distributors in the country and probably one of the top 10 wine and spirits distributors in the country. And you put us together and we're a pretty good sized business.
It's really amazing. It's amazing what you've done over the soon-to-be 75 years of the family business.
75th year in business here in Atlanta.
So let me switch to, quote, your other job.
Yeah.
And that's community. I know that your early involvement was with Camp Sunshine.
Camp Sunshine, my mom had a bout with cancer. I wanted to give back some way. Had heard through my friends Hamilton and Dorothy Jordan that they had started a camp for kids with cancer called Camp Sunshine. I got put on the board there and found out they didn't have a place to go have camp every year. So I just asked the question, why hasn't anybody ever tried to build a place where all these different camping groups could go? And that was how Camp Twin Lakes started.
And Camp Twin Lakes today is how big?
We started with 7 partners and 800 campers for a summer. And today, virtually 20 years later, we're serving 9,000 on a year-round program, 48 weeks at 3 different campsites with over 50 partners.
Woodruff, deep connection to Woodruff.
Yeah, the Arts
Also
Center.
know the transformation in terms of what's going on there.
Yeah, there is a big transformation there and needed to be, but the Woodruff Arts Center is probably, it's the 3rd largest arts center in the country, the largest in the Southeast. You know, it's a great place, it's producing great art.
And your giving isn't just limited to Atlanta. I know that you haven't forgotten your alma mater.
No.
That Tulane now has a nice facility with your family name on it.
The Hertz Center down there, which was the initial facility that was built, it was sort of the first step for the Renaissance in athletics for Tulane, right, and to move things back on campus.
Let me thank you on behalf of the business community for all that you do.
Well, you're nice to say that.
You deserve every bit of it.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
It. Thank you, Ed.
The alcohol industry not only raises the spirits of its consumers, but state coffers get a big-time boost. When you combine beer, wine, and spirits, numerically speaking, of course, the economic impact for Georgia, over $1.5 billion. It roughly translates to around 46,000 jobs.